Good Wednesday afternoon to you, 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope you're having a good afternoon. With the injury to Deshaun Watson, Kevin Stefanski and the Browns had a decision to make. Is it DTR or is it Jameis Winston as their starting quarterback going against the Ravens Sunday? Today, Kevin Stefanski made it official.
Yeah, Jameis will start. Dorian, obviously, coming off that injury. We'll see how he looks this week, but Jameis will start. Jameis is a guy we've kind of talked about all offseason, who works very hard at this. Like you mentioned, has a ton of experience playing this game, has seen a lot. He prepares really well, so, yeah, feel good about it.
Dorian Thompson-Robinson is scheduled to practice. So the quarterback, the new quarterback, which they had to do because Watson's season is over with the Achilles injury, that's not the only new dynamic to the whole offense moving forward. Another kind of thing thrown in to the offensive mix.
I'm going to have Ken call the plays this week. Moving forward, that's the plan. I've told you guys before, we have a very, very collaborative process in how we work, both during the week and on game day. So I will continue to assist Ken and the offense as we game plan, as we get into the game. But I have total confidence in Coach Dorsett and the offensive staff.
Why now to make that decision?
Yeah, I'm just always looking at what we can do to just be a little bit better. And truth is, we have to be better on offense. And, Coach Dorsett is somebody that I rely on very heavily, and I just feel like this is the right thing for the team.
Let's welcome in Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Tim, the Winston thing had to be done. You had to make the move. It's curious that you kind of do the quarterback and the play calling in the same. You and I were talking about doing the same thing offensively and expecting different results was kind of insane. And now they're changing up everything at once.
Yeah, I mean, they're changing one thing out of necessity with Deshaun Watson with his Achilles injury and now with Ken Dorsey calling the plays. I think we had talked about it for weeks is, the idea of whether the offense is unfixable. And I felt like it was until you made significant changes. Well, here's your significant changes. You have a new starting quarterback in Jameis Winston this Sunday against the Ravens, and obviously Ken Dorsey getting, being the play caller on offense. And I think if I'm trying to understand it from the Browns' perspective, I mean, they're 1-6. This offense has been bad all season long. They still haven't hit 20 points in a game all season. I think Sunday was the first time they hit 300. Last Sunday against the Bengals was their first 300-yard games in offense. You got to do something. I mean, you have to at least try something different. I know probably going to the playoffs feels completely out of reach at this point. I mean, I can't imagine you're going to win 10 straight games to get into the playoffs. So you got to try something different. And I feel like, it's a tough ask to do it against the Ravens as hot as they're playing. But again, you got to try something. And I think getting Kevin Stefanski off play calling might help with some of the procedural things. Way too many times guys are not getting lined up correctly, illegal shifts, illegal formations, different things like that. Play calls not getting it fast enough. And it feels like watching a lot of the games, the play calls were taking about extra 5-6 seconds, and you bring the quarterback out with less than 15 seconds on the play clock. You don't give him a lot of time to digest what's going on in front of him. And I wonder how much of that is trying to streamline the process. So we'll see how it all plays out. But I mean, honestly, it can't be much worse than it has been the first 7 games of the season.
Yeah, again, the whole collaborative thing, I'm kind of with you. Is that part of the issue? So we'll find out. Browns offense, as you mentioned, hasn't scored 20 points in a game yet this season. Jameis Winston, new quarterback, talked today about what he's trying to do to get it rolling.
What I can do is be decisive, keep everything simple, and just do my job. What we can do as an offense is to be decisive, keep things simple, and do our job. What's more important is our execution. We have had some good drives, sustained drives. We have to continue to build on drives and give our defense a breather, whether that's taking what the defense gives us. We all want to attack the ball down the field vertically. Like, that's explosive, that's fun football, and that's what we're trying to incorporate as offense, is get back to playing Cleveland Browns fun football.
And Tim, when I think of Jameis Winston, there's a lot of similarities to Joe Flacco. Big, strong arm. He'll throw the ball downfield. And sometimes it works out really well, and other times he gets intercepted.
Yeah, we have to remember, I think it was 2019 when he led the league in passing yards, 5,100 yards. He threw 33 touchdowns that season, but he also threw 30 interceptions. So in a way, that sounds a lot like what Joe Flacco did for the Browns in the final handful of games last season. Yeah, he threw touchdowns, but he also threw interceptions, and it kind of came back to bite them in the playoff game in Houston. So I think with Jameis, you have to take some of the good with the bad. But he's a professional quarterback. He's a former #1 overall pick who's played at a pretty good level. He's been a Pro Bowler in his career, and I think that he understands. I think he understands this is an opportunity for him to show going forward that, he can start if needed. And, even saw at the end of the game against the Bengals, yeah, they were probably playing very soft prevent coverage, but still able to get a touchdown drive there at the end of the game, give them the very smallest of chances to get back in the game. But I think it's going to be good for the Browns to have a veteran quarterback in there who's decisive, who's not afraid to let it rip back there. Give him a chance because, with DTR out with his dealing with his finger injury, you don't really have much else to go with there.
Yeah, and the other thing is I would assume you're looking at a quarterback in the draft. You need a short-term answer. He might be. Jameis Winston could be that short-term answer if he goes out and plays well. This, in a nutshell, will explain a lot of the struggles of the Browns' offense. Out of 76 qualified offensive tackles, Jedrick Wills ranks 66th. DeJuan Jones ranks 68th. James Hudson ranks 69th before he was injured. Again, I know those guys are coming off injuries, but you got to be better than they've been. And to be honest with you, Jedrick Wills is probably making it that you have to go draft a tackle.
Yeah, I think I thought it was a guy, certainly coming into the season, he hasn't been quite you would expect from a top 10 pick, but solid enough where you should at least investigate, keeping him long term. But the way the season has gone for him, he just has not been good. There's the photo of DTR taking that sack for the intentional grounding, and then Jedrick Wills looking over what just happened basically. And yeah, he's coming off his own knee injury, same with DeJuan Jones, but to see all these guys really struggle the way they are, it's been kind of shocking. I know the Browns obviously switched out offensive line coaches from Bill Callahan to Andy Dickerson, but to see this drop-off is pretty shocking, and I think it kind of symbolizes the entire offense, where it seems like everybody in this offense is not performing up to their standards, and almost halfway through the season, that's alarming that it really hasn't gotten too much better, especially up front.
All right, so take a look at this too as well. This is observations every NFL team after Week 7 PFF. Browns' run defense has been a problem all season. Now they get to face Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson this Sunday. They say for the Browns, observation from Week 7, nobody has more stops in the run game this year than Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, 19. While I love that, the problem is you better have more than just Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. Because Jackson, it could get ugly in a hurry with Lamar and Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry has had back-to-back 150-yard plus rushing days.
Yeah, I mean, Derrick Henry looks like Derrick Henry again. I mean, I think we might have talked about it the offseason. I've certainly written about it, that I think, that might have been the best thing for Derrick Henry is to go play with Lamar Jackson, because for the first time in his career, not everybody's not paying exclusive attention to Derrick Henry. You have to pay attention to Lamar Jackson too, and that's what allowed Henry to go crazy this season. Certainly this Sunday, it's a chance to already get up to 100 yards rushing. I mean, he's been absolutely incredible. He looks like he's 24 years old again out there instead of 30. And I think for the Browns, the best way to handle that, you got to win the point of attack. You got to put up that wall on you can't really let the offensive line get to the second level, and you got to, be as good as you possibly can at, making Lamar have to make some of those decisions to read option game where he hands it off, and then you have to be stout in the interior, right? I keep thinking about the Raiders game where the Raiders we've talked about it before, is 3 games into that season, a historically poor rushing attack, and then they blew the Browns off the line in that game repeatedly. The Browns have to be able to be physical up front to really allow Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah and their downhill players to make plays on Derrick Henry, stop him before he can get any sort of momentum. Obviously easier said than done, because look at what Lamar and Derrick Henry have done this season.
All right, before we go to break, some news relative to the roster. Nyheim Hines will not be activated, so he will not be able to be activated on the roster at all this year. 21-day window closes today. That puts him on the injured list for the rest of the year. Wyatt Teller has been designated to return. Opens up his 21-day window to return active from the injured list. He was hurt in week 3. Also, relative to who's practicing and who doesn't, Jerome Ford, hamstring, Ronnie Hickman, ankle, Jordan Hicks, Ethan Posick, Jedrick Wills, all not practicing today. Again, a lot of offensive linemen on that. If they could get Teller back, I think that helps, but it's probably a week or so away.
Yeah, I mean, it's at least progress that, Wyatt Teller seems like he's coming back. The more of the starting offensive linemen you can have, the better, especially as Nick Chubb continues to try and work his way back. Saw last game against the Bengals that he really just didn't have a lot of rushing lanes to work with. And I think that plus kind of just the fact he hasn't played in a year, it's really the first time he took contact, probably kind of why he didn't have the game a lot of people were expecting outside of the touchdown, which obviously he had to feel so good for Nick Chubb, the fact that he got that touchdown. But, that's been one of the stories of this entire year is this offensive line for now more than a calendar year just hasn't been healthy, going all the way back to week 1 of last year with Jack Conklin going down with that knee injury. Conklin's back, but Jed Will's in and out with a knee issue. DeJuan Jones has been battling his own issues. Ethan Posick's been out. Joel Bitonio has really been the only starting guy who's been consistently out there far and away the most of everybody. And that's just been difficult. When you have that much inconsistency in the offensive line in terms of who's available, it's going to be so difficult to be able to perform at a high level, especially at the level the Browns offensive line has been at the last couple seasons.
Tim Bielik and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout. We'll continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Stay with us.
You know what I think? I don't think you have the stones.
Oh, I've got the stones. I think you're the one that don't have the stones.
Let's settle this once and for all.
Amble up to the 4 new Ohio Lottery scratch-offs with all kinds of stones. Gemstones, diamond, emerald, sapphire, and ruby 10s. $10 each, 10 times multipliers. 2 fast spots for quick draw wins of up to $100 and a $500,000 grand prize. Which one will you get when you order them up? Well, that's just the luck of the draw.
We continue talking Browns with Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Tim, I know you wrote an article, one of the Factor Fictions, in that. Are the Browns the team that is most desperate to draft a quarterback? Factor Fiction.
I say fiction, and I'm going to preface this by saying tomorrow morning I'm going to have a story on cleveland.com why I think Shedeur Sanders from Colorado is the best quarterback in this year's draft. This isn't a very deep quarterback draft, especially compared to last year's, but I think there are two guys right now who look like certainly worthy of top 10 picks, Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward. But going back to what you're saying about, are they going to be the most desperate team? I don't think so. Could they certainly be? Yeah, they certainly have reason to be. They still have key pieces of a team that I think a lot of people thought had a chance to go back to the playoff, maybe even had a shot to get to the Super Bowl if guys were healthy. But then you look at the other teams contending for a top 10 pick, the Tennessee Titans, for example. Will Levis doesn't look like the guy right now. They're in a full rebuild. Is it time? Are they going to be ready to get the quarterback after, a couple drafts where they've torn things down and built them back up? Then you look at the Las Vegas Raiders. Right now they have a better record than the Browns, but last April they missed out on a chance to draft any of the top quarterbacks. The top 6 all were off the board before they had their turn to pick 13. They had to settle for Brock Bowers. Obviously, they don't have a long-term answer at the position either, how desperate they could be. And then you have the Carolina Panthers, not even 2 full season removed from the Bryce Young trade. Obviously, that hasn't worked out. We know that for the last few years, they've been extremely aggressive at trying to get their quarterback, trading for Sam Darnold, trading for Baker Mayfield, trading up for Bryce Young, and essentially giving away Caleb Williams to the Bears. So given that track record, I would imagine they're going to be extremely desperate to get a quarterback high. I think it kind of comes down to, if the Browns end up finishing with 3 wins or fewer this season, they'll certainly be in position. Maybe 6 or 7, say, if they end up in that area. I don't know how desperate they become in that situation. I mean, honestly, my personal opinion, I'm basing on nothing else. I would imagine a team like the Titans or Panthers, if they get the first pick, they're not trading away because a guy like Shedeur Sanders, a guy like Cam Ward would certainly be available for them to take a quarterback. That's why I think, as much as it looks like the Browns might need one for the future, I don't see them being the most desperate to get one next offseason.
All right, so we know the Ravens are coming up. This is kind of scary. The Ravens have now gone 5 straight weeks of 400 yards or more in total offense and 7 straight weeks of scoring 20 points or more. Browns have yet to do either in a game this season. The Ravens offense, and they've played, the schedule's been pretty good. They're playing really at a high level, offensively.
Yeah, I think they're the hottest team in football right now, especially offense. You know, looking at their offense, number 1 in points per game, 31.1, number 1 in rushing yards, number 1 in yards per carry, number 1 in passing yards per attempt. So, I mean, you pick an offensive category, and they're just near the top. And I think, obviously, Lamar Jackson to Derrick Henry, that combination has been absolutely sensational. I mean, you really don't have to look much further than that to see why this team really has just blown up the way they have. I mean, even looking at throughout the season, they haven't scored fewer than 20 points in a game this entire season. The lowest they had was 20 in week 1 in Kansas City, but then you look 35 against the Bills, 41 against the Bengals, 30 against the Commanders, 41 on Monday night in Tampa Bay. So, yeah, they're going to come into this game, you know, with a little bit less rest than the Browns are coming off, you know, playing Sunday at home against the Bengals. They get to stay home. The Ravens have to go back on the road. That might be one of the only advantages. And, yeah, the Ravens defense is not nearly as good this season, 26 in scoring, but you don't really need a great defense if you're constantly putting up 30-plus points in a game.
All right. You also wrote an article, 3 things to know about the Ravens. We've talked a little bit about them. We can go a little bit deeper. Number 1, Derrick Henry makes their run game even tougher. Number 2, Ravens have a problem defending the pass. And number 3, despite a tough schedule, Ravens are as hot as anybody. And there are a number of people that think the Ravens have a legitimate shot at knocking off the Chiefs and getting to the Super Bowl.
And they certainly do. I think if there's any question about Baltimore right now, it's that defense. And, you know, we talked a lot about Derrick Henry, so we'll skip right to number 2, talking about the defense. I think we all kind of knew before the season that with Mike McDonald leaving to take the head coaching job with the Seahawks, that this defense was going to take a step back. They lost a lot of key pieces, so it was inevitable they're going to kind of take a step back. And they really have. 26th in scoring defense, 23rd in total yardage defense, 32nd in passing defense. And yeah, they've been thrown on a lot because the offense is scoring a lot of points. They've given up they're 29th in most pass attempts allowed, but also 28th in net yards per pass attempt. So that means not only are teams throwing on them a lot, they're still gaining a lot of yards. So there's yards to be had, I think, for Jameis Winston. And that's why I said specifically about their pass defense. Their run defense is really good. They're number 1 in yards allowed, number 1 in yards per attempt allowed. They've allowed the 3rd fewest rushing attempts. Teams are just not running the ball on them. And when you're allowing just 3.3 yards a run total, you know, throughout 7 games, it's pretty obvious why you aren't going to try to run the football. And then, you know, going back to how hot they are again, I said at 0-2, I had concerns about them after they lost the Raiders. They really need to turn things around, and my have they. I mean, you look at who they played last season. Of the 5 teams they've beaten, 3 were division champions. The Cowboys, the Bills, and the Buccaneers all won their divisions last season. And the Ravens have won 3 of these 5 games on the road. So this is arguably the highest team in football right now. I know the Kansas City Chiefs are undefeated. I know the Detroit Lions are getting hot right now. But when you consider who the Ravens have played and how they're just dominating offensively, you can't find a team that's hotter right now in football than the Baltimore Ravens are.
Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, as always. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Tim.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Have a good day.
Tim Bielik, make sure you check him out. Always really good stuff with Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We continue talking Browns. Jared Mueller from Dawgs by Nature, straight ahead. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
You know what I think? I don't think you have the stones.
Oh, I've got the stones. I think you're the one that don't have the stones.
Let's settle this once and for all.
Amble up to the 4 new Ohio Lottery scratch-offs with all kinds of stones. Gemstones, diamond, emerald, sapphire, and ruby tins. $10 each. 10 times multipliers. 2 fast spots for quick draw wins of up to $100 and a $500,000 grand prize. Which one will you get when you order them up? Well, that's just the luck of the draw.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams. I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue talking Browns on Sports for CLE. Told you earlier, Jameis Winston named the starter for the game against the Ravens, and Ken Dorsey will also call the plays. Winston talked about getting the start.
I'm extremely grateful to have yet another opportunity to do what the Lord has called me to do in the NFL, and that's be a starting NFL quarterback. So I'm beyond grateful for this, and I am prepared. And I will do my very best.
What can you do to add a spark to this offense?
Go out there one play at a time, and actions, and execute. It's simple.
Let's welcome in Jared Mueller from Dawgs by Nature. And Jared, they were forced to make the Winston move because of Watson's injury. It's kind of interesting that they combine that with the change in play calling. It's kind of like, okay, was kind of looking for that a couple weeks ago.
It is. It's really interesting. And the way that the season has gone, everyone is trying to figure out the why, right? Is there a setup? Is this the next step? Are they trying to take power away from Kevin Stefanski? Or is this, now that Watson's out, we're going to go to Dorsey? To be honest, most likely, obviously they needed to go to Winston. Last week, DTR was the backup, primarily to try to take advantage of some things with the Bengals defense, with his speed and some of those kind of things, and those fourth down packages and some of that kind of stuff. It really wasn't a demotion for Winston. It just worked out that way with Watson getting injured. And then you bring in Winston now. Like, he's the starter. If he plays well, he's going to stay the starter. DTR was a full participant today. And so it's obviously not because of the injury. And I think the reality is that Ken Dorsey is now calling plays because the Browns, when it comes to functionality, have been terrible. Penalized, pre-snap, all of that kind of stuff. And the reality is Kevin Stefanski is responsible for the entire team. Something has to change day to day, minute by minute, throughout a game. And in this case, it allows Stefanski to deal with the special teams, deal with the defense, look at the nuances of offensive line and running back and substitutions with wide receivers to make sure everything from that perspective is taken care of, and hope that him and Dorsey have really prepared Dorsey to call the plays on Sunday.
All right, so Jameis Winston, he's a guy that was a former #1 overall pick and has played a lot of football in the NFL. Here is a look at it. This encompasses 80 starts. He averages 267.8 yards a game. He's thrown 136 passing touchdowns, 11 rushing touchdowns. He has thrown 93 interceptions, so more than an interception a game. He's a couple games under 500 total. Again, he's going to throw the ball deep. He's going to throw it into coverage. Sometimes it'll work out, and sometimes the guys in the other helmets are going to find the football. That's what he is. But if you like Joe Flacco, you're going to kind of like Jameis Winston, I think.
Yeah, one of our guys on the site, Matt Wilson, kind of went over that this week, actually today, talking about kind of the differences and the similarities between Winston and Flacco. He's going to throw the ball. I think what you're going to see is he's more comfortable right now, kind of pre-snap reads and some of those kind of things. So you're going to see him force things in, especially with the Baltimore Ravens, who like to disguise a lot of things. You're going to see some struggles when there is post-snap movement in the defense. So if they line up in cover 2 with the kind of that shell and then they rotate into, a cover 1, a cover 0, some kind of other zone kind of setup. That's where you're going to see some problems for Jameis Winston, some over the middle stuff that he struggled with at Florida State. But you're right. There was a reason, famous Jameis, and I forget what the saying was, and they wanted teams to tank for him, but he was the number 1 overall pick for a reason. Guys really like him, good personality. We enjoy him as an interview in the locker room, all of that kind of stuff. But you're going to get that boomer bust. I think you're going to see a little bit less than we saw from Flacco last year, both in terms of productivity, but also in terms of interceptions. I think Winston is slowly but surely, time in New Orleans really helped him kind of calm that down a little bit and decide to really check those reads before making that throw. So it'll be an interesting process. Again, the problem hasn't only been quarterback. And so the assumption is change at quarterback and play caller isn't going to solve everything.
Yeah, no, without question. The one thing he has an absolute cannon, and that arm gets him in trouble because he truly believes that if the window's a little bit bigger than a football, he thinks he can fit it in there.
And the problem is Cooper's gone, right? So he's your guy you trust to kind of go get that ball. Who do you trust? David Njoku? He did last week. But beyond Njoku, who else are you trusting to kind of do those one-on-one balls?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. So this is also kind of I knew Tillman was big, but take a look. Cedric Tillman's first game without Amari Cooper, second on the team in routes run, ahead of Elijah Moore, who kind of was in the doghouse a little bit. 12 targets, 127 air yards, first on the team in receiving yards. There's an opportunity for Jerry Jeudy and Cedric Tillman and Jamari Thrash, and to a lesser extent, Elijah Moore. Clearly, Elijah Moore had some. He was not. He was being disciplined and didn't play the first couple series. That's the best way to put it. But there's an opportunity for wide receivers here.
There really is. It'll be really interesting to watch what receivers are really comfortable on the routes that Winston's going to be comfortable throwing, right? And so Tillman and Dorian Thompson-Robinson have a history together, so it's not a surprise going back, a long way there that they hooked up a lot. But you're really going to see, I think Elijah Moore will continue to get kind of phased out. The timing routes and some of those option routes are not really where you're going to see Winston place the ball too often. I don't think you're going to see as many swing passes either. And so I think Tillman, I think Jerry Jeudy, I think David Njoku, those are the 3 guys that are really going to get a lot of attention, a lot of time. Jamari Thrash is someone Kevin Stefanski talked about before the Bengals game, that he could step up a little bit into that role. I'm not sure it's going to be as much as maybe, getting 5 or 6 targets, but you might see him take over for Elijah Moore as that third receiver. The other thing that'll be interesting to watch is Jalen Darden really was the third receiver last week early in the game, and they cannot elevate him this week. So either they have to sign him to the 53-man roster, or the guy that they had coming in as the third receiver will just sit on the practice squad for the rest of the year unless he gets signed to the 53-man roster.
All right, so this is weeks 1 through 7, offensive supporting cast rankings that encompasses average team PFF rush, receiving, blocking, and run blocking grades, everything except passing. And it's cumulative weeks 1 through 7. Tops, the Ravens. Second, Lions. Third, 49ers. Second to the last, the Browns, and the last, the Patriots. So the Browns are 31st, and that's, if you've watched any of the Browns games, the eyeball test will tell you that's pretty accurate.
Yeah, I mean, there have really, besides Njoku at times who's been injured, there really hasn't been anybody that's been impressive. Nick Chubb had an okay return, and we were really impressed because compared to most of our running backs, that was an impressive showing. And again, for what he was coming back from, it was amazing. But in general, that was a okay to good game out of Chubb, and it looked impressive, right? And so, Cooper dropped so many balls. Jerry Jeudy had a catch here or there or a gain here or there. But overall, the offensive line has been bad. The run game has been non-existent. And the passing game has been generally pretty putrid, and it all plays together. And then you had a quarterback who struggles, and now you have a historically bad offense. It has not been a lot of fun so far for Browns fans or for the Browns offense.
Yeah, players and coaches either, I would imagine. Jared Mueller, Dogs by Nature, now going to step aside, take a quick timeout. We'll head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports4CLE, be right back.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Jared Mueller from Dawgs by Nature. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey guys, I just had sort of a wild idea. Michael Penix was probably the most pro-ready quarterback coming out of last year's draft. Do you think the Browns should possibly give the Atlanta Falcons a call, considering Michael Penix is probably going to sit the remainder of this year and next year, about a package maybe including Greg Newsome, a second-round pick this year, maybe a conditional second-round pick next year? Just my thoughts, but hopefully we'll be able to get some wins from this terrible season. Go Browns.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Jared, I like the thought. Penix is intriguing. I don't think there's any way the Falcons are giving him up. They took him, and it's more likely that they will look to move on from Kirk Cousins, because you don't take a guy that high and piss off a guy that you just signed to a big-time free agent contract unless he's your guy moving forward.
I mean, I think the only reality would be is if at the end of the season, the Falcons see Shedeur Sanders, Cam Ward, any of those guys as better than Michael Penix, and the Browns have the pick to get that quarterback, and the Browns like Penix better than one of those guys, then you could see that number 1, number 2, number 3 pick for Michael, plus whatever, Greg Newsome is an example, could be a variety of things for Michael Penix. In general, that's more of a Madden-oriented trade. But the reality is the NFL has become more and more creative, more and more flexible, and so it would not be overly shocking. I did not have Penix graded that high. Injury concerns, some other things that I didn't love about him, more of a second-round pick, but I definitely had him higher than Bo Nix. So he is definitely a player that the Browns could have some interest in, especially with some of the concerns about Cam Ward's been around for a long time. Shedeur Sanders, people are concerned Deion will try to keep him out of some places. So it's interesting, unlikely. The Kirk Cousins thing would also be interesting, but the salary, the contract makes it unrealistic for a lot of teams, especially the Browns, given everything with Watson.
Yeah, and along those lines, I know you wrote an article, and we've talked a little bit about it on this show. Because the Browns are one of the teams that insures their contracts, there may be a way that the Browns get some cap relief from the injury to Watson. I know you wrote an article about it. Take us through that and talk about it a little bit.
So it's a really interesting policy is the best way to say it. And so the NFL is really not advertising it, really doesn't want it to kind of be out in front. But the Cleveland Browns got about $4 million extra of cap space from last year, Deshaun Watson injury, coming into this year. Now, that is based on how many games he missed at the end of the season and how much of his salary that they insured. And so this year, according to Seth Walder on ESPN, the Browns insured about $54 million, somewhere in that range, of Deshaun Watson's contract. Now, again, we're just making a little bit of assumptions on some of the numbers that's correct. But based on that, the NFL basically sees that insurance payments as credits, because the Browns literally will get that money. They see that as a credit towards the Browns salary cap. And so if that's accurate, if all the information that we got and that we've heard is accurate, then the Browns could recoup about $27 million on next year's salary cap. If Watson misses more time next year, which currently based on the 2 surgery options, it seems like he should be available for week 1, but we literally just don't know what the future holds. They could even get more salary cap space the following year. So everything is kind of a year in advance. But what we know is the Browns owe a large sum of money in salary cap to Deshaun Watson over the next couple of years. So $27 million, while it sounds like a lot, is maybe around a fifth of what they owe him, somewhere in that way, a fifth or a sixth. So it's helpful. It's not perfect, but if they're able to pull that off, it just really is going to allow them to make some decisions as we go forward. That's if Deshaun Watson can play again, if Deshaun Watson wants to play again, all that other variables that we have no idea about. Really an interesting way for teams to both financially get some money back from insurance. Now they have to pay into that, but also then to recoup some salary cap space on some of their large contracts.
All right. You also wrote an article about a 2025 mock draft. So obviously, Browns have their first-round pick right now. It's pretty darn high. I believe it's third overall. Patriots and Carolina ahead of them. So here's who you had in a 2025 mock draft. You had them taking Shedeur Sanders, quarterback from Colorado, first. You have them taking an offensive tackle. Can't argue that they need that, from Arizona. Third round, a wide receiver, another thing that the Browns need, and then in the fourth, a tight end. So all those boxes checked. The whole Sanders thing, could you see them taking? You look at him; he's an intriguing talent. It's another sideshow, and we've had a lot of sideshows recently.
Yeah, I think that's how do you not let the past affect your decision making, right? When you are evaluating talent, your goal is to understand what is the talent on the field, what is the personality, how is he as a teammate, all of those kind of things. The rest of it is just noise, right? The rest of it is stuff that should not matter. Fans should not matter. Media should not matter, right? Those are things that should not matter for good quality teams. And so I think they are not going to let the past. Again, I am assuming Andrew Berry, Kevin Stefanski, at least those two, maybe Paul DePodesta, they're not going to allow the Johnny Manziels of the world and now the Deshaun Watsons to really dictate how they make decisions. They are going to make decisions on what is best for the Cleveland Browns. Would it shock me, given Deshaun Watson's contract, if they traded out of that pick? Absolutely not, because again, Watson, if he's on the roster, there's a lot of money to sit, right? And so, but I think Shedeur Sanders, I am not delved deep into any of my quarterback evaluation. You see a lot of the skills that will translate: arm talent, ability to read defenses, quickness in the pocket, those kind of things that you really are going to like. Cam Ward probably is the highest rated quarterback right now, at least based on his performance, but there's a lot of other variables that will go into that: age, those kind of things. Different systems, those kind of things. So right now, Shedeur Sanders makes sense for the Browns, given Watson's injury and given their need at quarterback. He is the guy, and I could see Jameis Winston being kind of the mentor type and sign for another year.
Yeah, that does make sense. What do you like about the tackle from Arizona, Savanea?
To be really honest, he's a player who has some zone blocking history. So that's really, really helpful. And at this point, second round, even if it's high in the second round, really tough to find really good tackles after the first round. Like, that's just, historically speaking, it is a very low percentage left tackle, right tackle that are available after the first round. There are some, obviously. But here you have a player who might be more of a right tackle than a left tackle, could slide into guard. And at this point, with Joe Bitonio's age, I really just want a player who's going to be really, really good. A lot of similarities to Bitonio when he was coming out left tackle at Nevada. I think he can play right tackle mostly, whether that means DeJuan Jones slides over to left tackle or in the zone blocking scheme, you do actually free up your tackles a little bit to not have to be that top end 6'6", 6'7" long arm player, because you really want your tackles to be able to get out and move more than what they're kind of doing this year, which is a struggle, which is kind of catch the blockers and try to stop the blockers just with size, length, and technique. Movement really allows some of these type of players to excel.
All right, before I let you go, Barry Shook, who writes a lot of historical stuff for the site Dawgs by Nature, he wrote one detailing an idea that the NFL should think about retiring Jim Brown's number 32 league-wide. Idea was initially John Wooten, who was a guard who blocked for Brown with the Browns. Was also that idea mentioned and approved by Bill Belichick, the Super Bowl winning coach who got a start here in Cleveland. Take us through that article and about what you think about it.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Jim Brown is a unique character. On the field, many would say he's the greatest of all time. Tom Brady obviously has really for most has taken over that. But a short time on the field. But what he did on the field was amazing. Going into Hollywood, and then a lot of the social justice stuff. Like if you're kind of making the columns, there's a lot of positives there. And when players of this age start to see some film on Jim Brown, they are blown away by what they see. Size, speed, ability, all of that kind of stuff. There is a lot of things in the negative column that off the field and a lot of things that if you want to do the research, you'll definitely find. I think it's an interesting idea. So just kind of the process, and Barry does a great job on our site. We're really blessed to have access at the Senior Bowl, gets lots of interviews there. He's interviewed Bubba Ventrone this year and a variety of other players. Billy Cundiff, a former Browns kicker, I have an interview from him is coming out tomorrow. So John Wooten, actually, this was his idea. He actually spoke to Roger Goodell, and then he emailed Roger Goodell and a variety of other people, including Bill Belichick, who supported the idea. And then Bill Belichick talked about it on his podcast, which kind of revved it up, right? John Wooten is a really good guard. Bill Belichick is historically one of the greatest coaches of all time. So when Bill Belichick says something from John Wooten's email to him, it really starts to gain the traction. So Barry reached out to John, talked about his idea, talked about where it's at in the process. And so just what is next? Many leagues have things like this. You know, Jackie Robinson, famously in baseball, his 42 is retired. It seems like something that could happen, but I think a lot of Browns off the field stuff will just keep it from being something that the league wants to quote unquote celebrate, given all of that. Unfortunately, given what he meant to the Browns and what he's meant to the NFL.
Jared Mueller, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Jared.
Absolutely, Dave. Always good to see you, brother.
Jared Mueller, make sure you check him out. Always really good stuff on Dawgs by Nature. Great Browns coverage. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We turn our attention to the Cavaliers opening the NBA season tonight. Sam Amico from hoopswire.com straight ahead. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is dedicated to recognizing exceptional students, teachers, and schools throughout Ohio. Scan the QR code on screen to nominate students and teachers as Academic All-Stars and Teachers of the Month. They must be currently enrolled or teach in grades K through 12. Is your K through 12 school developing students' literacy skills to achieve success in reading? If so, you can nominate your school for the School of the Year. Students can win $100, teachers can win $500, and schools can win $2,500. Scan the QR code, fill out the forms, and nominate deserving students, teachers, and schools today. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program takes pride in honoring exceptional students, teachers, and schools across Ohio. Submit your nomination today. It's fun, fast, and free. We turn our attention to the Cavs here on Sports4CLE. Cavs getting ready to open the season against the Raptors in Toronto tonight. It'll be the head coaching debut for Kenny Atkinson with the Cavs. Let's welcome in Sam Amico, hoopswire.com. Sam, what are you paying close attention to tonight? Kenny Atkinson's first game as head coach.
Yeah, I think the first thing you want to notice is how comfortable the guys look together. They made the decision to bring back everybody and not sign anybody from the outside to a standard contract. So really you just want to see how fluid everything is. You know, you don't have the excuse that you might have some seasons of a lot of newness. Now there is a new system in place and, new coaching staff. But beyond that, I mean, the players from 1 through 12 should be pretty familiar with each other. So I think that's just it. You want to see a team that looks fluid and is offensively and is as good as last season defensively.
Are you expecting a little bit more, I don't want to say running, but pace, them to do things a little quicker and not as plodding, if you will?
Yeah, that's the idea, is to score a lot of points and try and do it quickly. Last year the Cavs finished, bottom 10 offensively. And a big part of that was the lack of transition baskets and pace. And it's not just, getting up and down on a fast break. It's getting into your sets quicker this year and getting good looks at the basket quicker out of the half-court sets. So that's the theory. I mean, that's what you want to do. That's part of the thing that Kenny Atkinson talked about is we've got to think and move faster and get good looks at the basket quicker off our offense. The old line, hurry, but don't rush. And I think that's kind of what the approach is to this season.
All right, so I know you wrote an article about the East. Some teams made some splashy moves. The Knicks, Karl Anthony Towns, the Sixers bring in Paul George. You kind of alluded to this earlier. Cavs didn't go outside of the guys that they had really a season ago. They did add the rookie, but take us through what you think the Cavs are relative to the Bostons, the New Yorks, and the Philadelphias in the East.
Yeah, well, I think that if Kenny Atkinson gets the most out of Evan Mobley offensively, which was a big reason they decided to make the coaching change, is they wanted to get Evan Mobley to another level, an all-star level, really. They believe he has that type of talent. At the very least, make him more efficient offensively than he ever has been at any point in his career. Darius Garland, admittedly is coming off a rocky season. If you can get him to return to his borderline all-star form, and then you get the same out of Mitchell and Jared Allen, or even better, Max Strus when he comes back. And a big key here is going to be your reserves when you're talking about how do you stack up against the rest of the Eastern Conference. Look, to me, I know the Knicks made a lot of splashy moves. The Sixers made a lot of splashy moves. The Celtics were dominant in the second half of last season on their way to the championship. But I think the Cavs are in that mix if they can get what they're hoping to get with the coaching change, which again is a banner year from Evan Mobley, a really good year from Darius Garland, and improvement from the reserves and consistency from the reserves. I think that they're right there in that mix. And I think most experts and insiders and people around the league who I've talked to feel the same. Like, yeah, continuity can count for a lot, provided you're getting the most out of those guys, under the new coaching staff.
So one of the challenges, the early going, Max Strus, a guy who's been really effective for the Cavs, was last year. He's going to be out for a while. So Dean Wade, Karis LeVert, a couple of options to fill in for Strus. Who do you expect to get those minutes, Sam? And do they share them? Or do they go one way? Is it matchup? How do they deal with that?
Yeah, it's going to be based on matchups a lot. I suspect that, Dean Wade would probably start because the Cavs really want Karis LeVert's scoring punch off the bench. They've got plenty of scoring in the starting lineup. And Dean Wade, I mean, his strength is his defense and his intangibles. He's not a guy out there looking to take 10, 12 shots. And that's a good thing because you have enough of those guys in the starting lineup, right, between Mitchell, Garland, and Mobley. And Jared Allen, not so much, but he does hit 8 or 9 shots a game anyway. So, I think that if you start LeVert, then all of a sudden you've got a kind of a hole to fill off the bench and looking for bench scoring. Whereas if you start Wade, you get that size, you get kind of those intangibles, you get a guy who doesn't need the basketball to contribute alongside your 4-4. So I would suspect that Wade will get the start, but to me, it's, if you're talking about who's going to get more of Max Strus's minutes, that's probably going to come down to LeVert, Isaac Okoro, and whoever else, depending on matchups. But, to me, it's, maybe Wade will play 5 minutes of each half or 7 minutes of each half, and LeVert will get the bulk of those minutes until Strus comes back, presumably in mid-November.
All right, so also you tweeted this out earlier, some inactives that we know for the Raptors. R.J. Barrett, the main one, Bruce Brown, Olynyk, Walter all out. And again, Cavs, obviously any season you want to start out right foot. Strus being out is it's a concern. He's a guy that helps them play the way they want to play.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to be lacking that, theoretically outside shooting, but more than that, you're talking about a guy who gives great effort in Max Strus and is kind of that emotional leader. You don't see Max Strus smiling a whole lot on the court. It's business all the time. And yeah, I mean, he's we always talk about the core four, but really beyond those four people on the Cavs, those guys are important. And Strus is vital, in terms of, like I said, just making sure that the effort is there. He really battles defensively. He gives you that outside shooting threat. You're missing a team that struggled to hit outside shots last year, and you've lost one of your best outside shooters in Strus. So, right, you want to start off right. And the big key there is, fortunately, if you got to find a silver lining, it's not any of the core four, and that's not a shot at Max Strus. It's just, you talk about your Jared Allen and Evan Mobley and Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell all the time. One of those guys would be a really big loss, especially 6 weeks as Strus is going to be out. But I just think for them, you can fill in that gap with a Dean Wade and a Karis LeVert and then essentially an Isaac Okoro, maybe even Jalen Tyson, the rookie. You're going to have to replace Strus kind of by committee in that way, and you're losing something off the bench. So not an ideal start, but at the same time, just go out and play your game, play as well as you can with the guys you have. And I would suspect the Cavs would be okay and be able to overcome that loss of Strus.
All right, so we've talked about season previews. This is from ESPN. For the Cavaliers, here's what they say. The Basketball Power Index overall rankings, 5th in the NBA. Chances to make the playoffs better than 96%. Projected win total is 47.5. Biggest strengths, Cleveland 8th in the league in assists per game, 28 a night. Playmaking ability of Mitchell, LeVert, Garland, and Strus. Crisp passing led to quality looks, 12th in field goal percentage. Number to watch on the court. On-court chemistry. And this is kind of interesting and kind of goes back to why I think they brought everybody back. Garland, Mitchell, Allen, and Mobley only played 28 games together and shared the floor for only 392 minutes. They outscored their opponents by only 27 points during that time. So how those core four, if you will, react together is going to be interesting. They say best bet Evan Mobley to win most improved player, plus 1,400. Last season, Mobley, injuries kept him out of 32 games, limited him when he did play. Still notched career best 58% shooting, was up to almost above 37% on threes, 9.4 rebounds, 3.2 assists per game. So, and again, Kenny Atkinson wants the ball in his hand. So I get that. So 5th overall in the NBA that doesn't seem like a reach or an under. That's probably pretty fair.
Yeah, I would think so. With everybody back from a team that advanced to the first round of the playoffs 2 years ago, and then the second round last year, despite those injuries, you just read them off. The core four didn't have a lot of games together, and the Cavs still won 48 games. So, ideally, you want those guys on the court together, getting more experience together, peaking at the right time. Kenny Atkinson has talked about that a lot. The Cavs of the past 2 years played their best basketball before the All-Star break. Kenny Atkinson said, we can't have that. You got to play your best basketball when it means the most. And that's really after the All-Star break in February. You're talking March, April, and May, and June if you can get there. So to me, it's just, Dave, it's just a matter of these guys playing at the top of their games, and they have no excuse not to, because they've played together now for 2 years, which in the NBA is a lifetime to keep not only your core, the majority of your reserves.
Sam Amico from hoopswire.com and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll look at what other national people are saying about the Cavs, their players, and their coach. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us.
You know what I think? I don't think you have the stones.
Oh, I've got the stones. I think you're the one that don't have the stones.
Let's settle this once and for all.
Amble up to the 4 new Ohio Lottery scratch-offs with all kinds of stones. Gemstones. Diamond, emerald, sapphire, and ruby 10s. $10 each. 10 times multipliers. 2 fast spots for quick draw wins of up to $100 and a $500,000 grand prize. Which one will you get when you order them up? Well, that's just the luck of the draw.
We continue talking Cavs with Sam Amico from hoopswire.com. ESPN national basketball analyst Brian Windhorst, native of Northeast Ohio, talking about how the Cavs fit together and what they're trying to do this year.
I am skeptical about whether or not you can have a team with Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland, two guys who need the ball in space, and say your answer to your offensive challenges is to give the ball to a big who's got questionable shooting. Having said that, what Kenny Atkinson is trying, I have seen this work. I remember a couple years ago when Chris Paul and James Harden came together, and I said, there's no way that's going to work. I don't care if Mike D'Antoni has a plan. Guess what? That plan worked. They would have gone to the finals if Chris Paul didn't hurt his hamstring. So if this plan works, you could build the case for the Cavs truly being the second best team in the East. Now, you may say, how could you possibly say that? But if they hit on all of this, their talent level is comparable to all the teams with the exception of the Celtics.
Sam, it's interesting, and I am concerned about Garland and Mitchell, but I think if you get Mobley away from the basket, I'm not saying go center court, it opens up the lane for guys to drive, and you still have Allen kind of off to one side.
Yeah, the good thing about this core is, yes, Mitchell and Garland kind of both need the basketball, as Brian Windhorst said, out in space, and creating their own stuff. But the good news about this is Mobley does seem to have extended his range a little bit. He does, by all accounts in the preseason and in the training camp, seems to be more efficient and more comfortable playing alongside those guards. Jared Allen, to me, is, fantastic because he doesn't need the ball, and he's going to take 6, 7, 8 shots a game, and he's going to make 80% of half the time, and then he's going to get a double-digit rebounds, and he's going to be your anchor defensively. So Jared Allen is almost kind of like the guy who it's like, well, wherever you put him, it's going to work because he doesn't demand the basketball, yet he still produces numbers and really helps you defensively. So, yeah, it's really kind of the core three if you really look at it, because and Brian Windhorst has a point. I mean, a lot of people are skeptical that can you survive and win big in the NBA starting two small guards, and the Cavs are out to prove that you can if you have the right productivity from a guy like Evan Mobley. That's why so much of this season is resting on Evan Mobley's shoulders.
Along those lines, NBA insiders predict the 2024-25 award winners. This from ESPN.com. Most improved player, number 1, according to Bobby Marks, Brandon Mueller, forward from the Hornets. Number 2, Evan Mobley. Mobley improved from 32% on jump shots in his first 2 seasons to 36% last year. Also shot 46% from threes in the final 12 games of the regular season. The other thing that I would add to that is he has a coach that wants him to get to go-to moves, which that was not what the Cavs were going to do with J.B. Bickerstaff.
Yeah, I think that the Kenny Atkinson hire is kind of a rebirth, not just for Darius Garland, who has come out and said the joy has returned to me again playing basketball. I lost my joy last season, but especially Evan Mobley. And we've heard all camp from Kenny Atkinson and Evan Mobley about, he can be good with the basketball, Evan Mobley. But it's just about getting him in situations and positions where he's comfortable with the ball and where he's not thinking too much, where he's just naturally reacting. And it's not just about Mobley scoring or hitting threes. He's a pretty good passer in the half court. And just seemed, when he first got to Cleveland as a rookie, he seemed so comfortable with the basketballs, not just for a rookie, but for like a 10-year vet. That kind of slowly but surely went by the wayside. And now Kenny Atkinson and the Cavs want Evan Mobley to rediscover that comfort level and that confidence with the ball. That doesn't mean, going out and taking a bunch of threes. It doesn't mean forcing up shots. It doesn't mean forcing passes. It means just being comfortable with the ball and knowing what to do with it, 90% of the time making the right decision with it. So if that thing happens, if all those things come together, yeah, I mean, to me, Brandon Mueller, the Hornets, already pretty doggone good. I don't know where else he's going to go to be the most improved, but Evan Mobley, there's certainly room for growth there, and I would think if all comes together, he'd have a shot at that award, and the Cavs, more importantly, would go places.
All right, same article, Coach of the Year. This is Jeremy Wu's picks. He has Chris Finch, Timberwolves 1, Kenny Atkinson of the Cavs number 2. Atkinson's free-flowing, pass-heavy style might be exactly what the Cavs need in his first year with the new team. He inherits a roster that won 48 games, will be tasked with getting even more out of it. Atkinson will push to get Mobley the ball, enable him to create mismatches, make plays, and be a bigger force within the offense. So I think we're dancing around the issue. If Evan Mobley is the guy they run the offense through, good luck defending Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, Jared Allen with them cutting and moving. I think if you cut to it, that's kind of what all this is saying.
Yeah, and that's just it. And, Jeremy Wu there from ESPN hit the nail on the head when he called Kenny Atkinson's offense free-flowing and pass-heavy. That's the idea. Donovan Mitchell has even talked about that and said, if we can get Evan Mobley, I'll gladly take less shots if we get Evan Mobley an all-star bid. So it really is, like I said, you can't stress enough how this comes down to Evan Mobley taking another step, because you really, you've got, as I said, you know what you're getting out of Jared Allen. You know what you're getting out of Donovan Mitchell. You assume Darius Garland's going to return something closer to the player who was an NBA All-Star a couple years ago. So really that leaves your other guy, and that's Mobley. And when the Cavs drafted him, they thought, do we have a guy here who can change the course of the franchise? And early on, it kind of looked like that. And then Cavs hate it when you say this, but he hit a wall, and he's not been able to crash through that wall offensively totally. Defensively, already elite. He and Jared Allen, elite defensive front court. But offensively, Cavs, again, have to be more efficient, and not just Mobley, but everybody. And, but yeah, this season to me starts and ends with Evan Mobley, because you already know what you're getting out of everybody else.
Yeah, it'll be fun to watch as well. I'm excited to see what they do with Mobley and how he develops. Sam Amico, as always, great stuff. Tell us, there's hoopswire.com. Tell us where else we can find you, Sam.
Hoopswire.com, and then, of course, the Facebook 330 to go page out of Summit County. And I'll give you a clue. I don't have the full details, but it's done. Got a show coming up on, I guess it's FanDuel Sports TV now with Boobie Gibson. So that will start, I believe, next week, the following week, run through all throughout the Cavs season. So excited about that as well. I got a couple irons in the fire, and I guess that beats having 0 irons in the fire.
SamAmico.com. As always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Make sure you catch him, hoopswire.com. Always really good Cavs coverage in addition to coverage of the entire NBA. It's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. See you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.